Hello and welcome to the Hackaday Podcast. I'm Elliot Williams.
And I'm Al Williams.
I'm Dan Maloney.
I'm Kristina Panos.
And I'm Tom Nardi.
This is episode 256, 378, 0XFF, and 1000000. This is our special episode 256, aka episode 0. Woohoo!
Did we overflow?
Yeah, I think we did. 256, 6 years and a little bit of the Hackaday podcast. So in honor of our roundest of round numbers, we got everyone here together and we're going to have a little bit of a round table in just a sec. But first, some quick Hackaday news. We just announced that Hackaday Europe is happening on April 12th through 14th in Berlin. You can go find the links at Hackaday. We are also running a call for proposals right now. So if you want to give a talk, head on over to hackaday.com and, I don't know, search for Hackaday Europe and you'll find it. Or hit the links up in the show notes over at hackaday.com/podcast. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
I love the latency. For those of you who don't know, we're doing this all remotely from all four corners of the world. Well, not really. But from all over the place. I am in Munich, and Al is in...
Well, as usual, I'm in lovely Houston, Texas.
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, for me.
Kansas City, Missouri. The first one.
And I'm in Ewing, New Jersey.
All in different time zones, all connected by the wonderful high latency internet. Oh, you know what would be really funny would be to do a What's That Sound with all of us here.
Oh, boy.
This is a journey into sound.
What's that sound?
I'll have to upload one. I specifically didn't do this because Al is known to cheat and listen to the sound ahead of time.
And I still don't get it, though, so I'm a bad cheater.
It's all good. Here it is. I'm uploading it now. Less than a minute left. You can actually listen to it basically as long as you want. I think I cut it off and faded it out.
I have an unfair advantage on this one, so I'm going to be quiet. I don't know the specific one, but I'm pretty sure I know at least what class of thing it is.
Good. Any other guesses?
Firecracker in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. About right. It's not, but that's pretty good.
And I think Al gave me a clue. I think it's something down a well.
Oh.
Ooh.
No, that wasn't my clue at all.
No.
Oh. Al, what's your clue?
I think it's a rocket launch of some sort.
Ah, okay.
Sounds like a whip crack to me.
So if you listeners out there know what the sound is, head on over to hackaday.com/podcasts and fill out the form. Next week, we'll be having a drawing among the right answers. We'll pick someone out randomly and get them a Hackaday podcast t-shirt. And now, in honor of episode 256, we wanted to do an Ask Us Anything. And so we asked listeners for questions, and we're just going to select among them for the cool one. You guys could have asked us anything more.
Yeah, this was their chance.
Yeah, exactly.
This was their chance.
Those of you who didn't ask your questions, man, you missed out. That's it. No more answering from here on out.
Don't come up at the next SuperCon and ask us questions. You had your chance.
That's right. This was it. Well, let's start off with a nice, easy one. This one comes from Why Not? What are you building for yourself? Is anyone in the middle of a project right now?
When are we not in the middle of a project?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of many projects. Getting to the end is the tricky part.
That's right. Well, that answers another question. Two in one. Pick one, Tom.
I guess in the immediate, what I've been working on is salvaging 18650 cells and putting them to use. So I've been working on a Not that there isn't already a lot of stuff on the market, but I wanted to do my own 18650 like protection circuit and 3.3 regulator board that I can just throw salvaged unprotected cells in. I'm also been contemplating putting an antenna on the roof. I've been listening to a lot of SDR stuff and went on the roof recently to survey the situation, and I realized I still had the old TV antenna mount is up there. And then I was like, well, and I can put a mast on there and put like some kind of wideband antenna. So once it warms up a little bit and I'm in less danger of slipping and falling off the roof, I think I'll be doing that.
All right, how about Dan?
I start a lot of projects that I never finish. I ideate a lot of projects that never even come to fruition. But my latest idea is Meshtastic network. I don't see any Meshtastic nodes in my area, at least on the global map of nodes. The closest one is a couple 100 miles away, probably. And that's a little bit out of range for Laura. So I'm going to work on a couple of nodes. I'm going to just do it sort of experimentally at first, just to see if maybe there are actually people on Meshtastic around here and it's just not showing up on the map. But if not, then I guess it's up to me. I'm going to have to scatter some nodes around in friends' houses and relatives' places of business and things like that, and see if I can start up a community of Meshtastic users.
Awesome. Kristina.
I've got two. Mine are both unsurprisingly keyboard related. I've been scheming to put a mechanical keyboard in an AlphaSmart 3000. That's one of those little word processors, but it has a terrible, terrible keyboard. And I don't say that as a connoisseur, I say that as a human being. Like, this keyboard is unusable. So someone out there created a PCB and yada, yada, yada. I'm going to put mechanical switches in it. I've also been playing with Lego a lot, especially in Bricklink Studio, which is like the Lego CAD program. Actually, George Graves sent in a tip about it, and I've been scheming to write it up, but I don't know what to do for the picture except make a box out of Lego. But I'm scheming to make a keyboard for the shortcuts for Bricklink Studio for, rotating parts and things like that.
Oh, awesome. Dedicated CAD, well, I guess Lego CAD, but still CAD keyboard.
Yeah. It's CAD to me.
CAD is CAD. What about you, Al?
Well, I always have a half a dozen things going. I'm like Dan, right? I got maybe a 60% hit rate. Recently I just wrapped up a project that didn't really show up too much except incidentally in the Hackaday pages, but it was the really complete 1802. Dan and I are the RCA 1802 guys. It's an 1802 emulation in a Raspberry Pi. And so it's very cool, very powerful. It kind of builds on the 1802 emulator I did for the 6502, the Kim Uno. But this one, because it's on a Raspberry Pi Pico, has huge memory, has a disk drive. It's not a real disk drive, but it's got disk storage. And so it's actually pretty usable. But where I'm going with that, and of course may never get there, is I've really been interested in trying to do a hardware in the loop simulator so that you could say, okay, I just want to debug my program. I have no real hardware. But now I'd like to switch in the CPU, but not the other pieces, right? Not the disk drive, for example. Or I want to control the ROM, but use the RAM that's on my target board. In work situations, we do that a lot. I don't see a lot of hardware in the loop in the hobby space, and I thought that would be a fun project to do. My other things have turned out to be educational items. I, every summer, do a 3D printing camp at one of the local universities. And so I did it, I say every summer. I shouldn't say that. Last summer was the first summer, and this summer is going to be the next summer. So I guess that's every summer starting last year. What I found was, this is like fifth and sixth graders, and I really had a vision of how that class would go. It went really well. I wrote it up in Hackaday even, but they maybe needed a little more structure than I had thought, and it varied by kid, right? There were a couple of them that were on fire, and you were like, can I hire you now, right? They were just really... one kid was so engaged in building fidget spinners, for example. But a lot of them really need more projects where you go, we're going to build this now. Do step 1, do step 2, do step 3. So I'm kind of reworking that. The other educational project is I'm taking a trip to a school in Costa Rica, and they want to do some kind of STEM project. But of course, they have one computer that belongs to the teacher and the kids don't really get to use. They don't have computers at home. they don't have a lot of things that you would think is kind of normal stuff. So I'm kind of trying to devise some interesting project to do with them. I remember years ago, I did a school project with a large company, and there was a bunch of us, a bunch of engineers. And when they were doing the briefing for it, one of our engineers, who I will say had a PhD, he raises his hand and he's like, well, will they have access to a scanning electron microscope? And the lady's like, no.
But of
They
course.
might have like macaroni and glue and paper plates and scissors. And so a little bit later, he raises his hand again. Will they have electron dispersive spectroscopy? And they're like, no. So this is like the punishment for me laughing at that is, now I'm in a place where they're like, do they have batteries? Well, no, they can't really easily get batteries. Do they have a computer? No. Or if they do, it's old and it's one for the whole community. So it's kind of a challenge. I'd welcome anybody's ideas on that. And that's kind of keeping me busy. That and Hackaday.
Thanks for messing up the curve, Al.
Yeah,
Is that a curve?
Like we're taking batteries out of the garbage and playing with Legos, and Al is bringing the joy of technology to children all over the world.
Well, I didn't want to talk about the fusion reactor that I'm building. The generation ship that, yeah.
I just finished version 6.0, I think, of my coffee roaster, and I'm pleased as punch. I've switched up from using old popcorn poppers to using heat guns, but then the heat gun internals didn't have a strong enough fan, and so what do you do when one heat gun doesn't put out enough airflow? First thing I did was I tried to spec out all sorts of other fans, and finding the right one's hard. And I ended up just buying another $13 heat gun, scrapping it. And now the thing has 2 barrels. It's a double-barreled coffee roaster. And I finally implemented all the other creature comforts that I needed, like the little can that you put the coffee beans in screws on now, so it's not held together with janky weights just holding it down. It now has a nice clean screw fit in there, which is pretty sweet. All sorts of things like that, but really dumb stuff. But question number 2 comes from calculus, which is, do you finish one project or start a dozen? And I think we've all basically touched on this already. The answer is, with me though, is it depends on your need, and the coffee must flow. And I finished this damn coffee roaster for the whatever time now, but it's finished and working. Yeah, I'll fix it again later. It'll be finished and working again, but at least I got this one done. But that is strictly because it needed to be done. When I don't have a hard deadline, like lack of coffee pushing me forwards, I tend to be more of the dozen projects type.
Or like when you've got a Hackaday badge due, that was
Yeah, that's
last year, right?
I mean, there's crunch time, right? And when it's crunch time, you work on this one project. But
Well, I've often said, the Zenos Paradox, where, Achilles is running for the tree and he gets halfway to the tree, then he gets halfway again to the tree, halfway. I say sometimes the essence of engineering is knowing when to reach out and grab that tree, right? So
It's like my Netflix queue. If I stopped everything I was doing now and I started working on it, I still wouldn't finish it by, the time I'm gone from this earth. But I do, occasionally have these bursts of enthusiasm, about a certain thing that I kind of put everything to the side and see it through. And I don't know what the formula is for that. It just happens sometimes. I've been obviously into the cyber decks for a while. I've been writing a lot about that, and I got it in my head to build one of my own. And that was one of the projects where I think maybe because there was so much other stuff happening in the community, and there's sort of a competition, who's doing what and who can make this do that. And I think that kind of pushed me to actually put everything else to the side and finish it. Of course, then when it was done, it just sits there on a shelf collecting dust. So, either way, it's going to collect dust, whether it's completed or in parts, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the answer is to Tom's question, what drives projects forward, but I sure know what kills them. And that's, for me anyways, running into a roadblock with lack of parts. I need that part. Don't have that part. Don't have anything relatively close to that part. My brain just says, no, it must be that part and no other. And, then you go off and order it, and then it's on the slow boat from China or whatever. And by the time you get it, you're like, what the hell was I doing? I've got on my breadboard right now, I've got 2 different versions of an automatic level control, audio automatic level control that I don't remember anything about them now. I just keep looking at them like I really should finish that. I'd have to reverse engineer my own stuff to figure out what I was even doing. More of the 12 things in flight at once, and none of them are flying.
Christina?
Well, when I do finish something, I make like a dozen more of them.
Ooh,
Good
Yeah.
thinking.
that's good.
I don't know why. It just happens. It happened with the beer can microphones. It happened with if I guess you can call them guitars, guitar building, banjo, cookie tin banjo building.
Are they refinements of each other?
The banjos, yes. The microphones, no, not really.
Yeah, but once you figure something out, there's definitely an appeal to cranking out a few more of them just to see if you've got it, right?
Yeah, but then I feel bad because they pile up like my bags, just like everything else.
Please take a microphone. Yes.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Have a microphone.
I really like Tom's idea that, having a whole bunch of them and then one just kind of takes off and flies. And I think that's probably not unrelated to having a whole bunch of irons in the fire at any one time. Like, then you can kind of see which one's ready to go and which one sparks your interest and which one grabs your heart and roll with it. I bet that's actually not a bad strategy.
I'd like to believe that I found the winning combination by chance.
I think that's pretty good. I like it.
I have a little trick for that, Tom. I don't know if it would work for anybody else, and it does take discipline. But if you know how you get really excited when you think of something, right? You go, oh, that would be great. I should make that. And so you want to go work on it. And if you have the discipline to say, well, the way I'm going to get to work on that is by finishing this, right? And then that's how you motivate yourself to get, because I have a pretty good completion rate. I won't say 100% because I don't like to lie, but, or perhaps maybe we should try saying the way I can work on that is by writing more Hackaday articles.
Oh, there you
Might
go.
work too.
Yeah, sometimes I think I'll learn something, in an unrelated project, and then that will kind of like spark a memory. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of speaking to what Dan was saying. I might have stopped something because I hit a wall, and I'd be working on something else and figure out some trick that would get me around it, and then go back. So it is kind of like bouncing on back and forth a little bit like Pong sometimes to finally get to the end.
Cool. I'll answer a couple real quick Hackaday podcast questions. One also came from Calculus. Is there going to be a box set? This was a joke from, I guess it was true. I did for a while archive the podcasts on CD. I would just burn all the old MP3s off the CD. You get about 10 episodes per CD, and we're now at episode 256. So you're looking at like 25 CDs, 26 CDs if I did it now. The answer is nobody wants that many CDs, man.
I was thinking we're probably at like 20-ish gigs now, I would imagine, with all the episodes. I mean, it's not unreasonable we could put it on a flash drive or something. I mean, a 32 gig flash drive is pretty cheap these days.
Yeah, but think of the Joe Kim cover art you could do for that many CDs.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. I mean, that could be like a SuperCon swag bag.
You lay them all out and then make a big picture.
All right. I'll start burning CDs. No, I think it'd be awesome to put them all on a thumb drive. That's hilarious.
If you're going to have them on a drive like that or on a CD, Christina's going to insist we have LPs.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, only the best of.
How many LPs is that? Like, I don't even want to know. 256 records is basically what we're talking.
Yeah, but what if you go down to 16 RPM?
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah.
Some of that educational stuff did that. Yeah, I was thinking that too. That shows you what nerds we are, as we were all thinking it. So.
Hackaday Podcast Lo-Fi Edition. I've always enjoyed the small blooper reels at the end of the episode. Is there any chance to hear more of the outtakes? We don't make any more mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right.
I thought the answer to that was only if you sign a non-disclosure agreement.
What goes on the cutting room floor stays on the cutting room floor.
I try to limit the outtakes to the length of the music.
No, I would say we have, talked in the past about doing, an uncut version, because I think there is a lot of cool stuff that we go off on these tangents and talk about that does have to end up on the cutting room floor just out of a matter of practicality, right? But I mean, I know when, and Elliot and I do a recording, we're often past the 2-hour mark when we finally say, okay, that's good. And then that gets distilled down to, 45 minutes, an hour. And it's not like we're screwing up for a solid hour. There is interesting stuff that's getting discussed. It just is, maybe a little off topic. I mean, I do think that'd be kind of cool to put the whole episode. I mean, obviously, it would be like a secondary thing, I don't know how many people have the patience or the interest to listen to the unfiltered Hackaday podcast, but I guess this is their chance to
Plus,
weigh
you'd
in
have
if
to
they
wait
want
for the
it.
statute of limitations to run out. So,
Yeah, right.
I don't know, Elliot. Maybe we should do a roundtable like this. We should do Hackaday podcast live at the next SuperCon.
I'm down for it. I think it'd be pretty cool.
I think that would be a
Ooh,
good.
that'd be good.
And then you get
That'd
to
be
see
good.
how all the sausage is made, and you can't take it home with you. So that's good.
I'm gonna get that on a shirt.
This one also comes from Calculus. What is your daily driver keyboard? What layout, cool macros? What would you like to see in the keyboard? And I hear somebody clicking away as I say this. That's you, Tom. You have a loud
Yeah,
ass
that's
keyboard.
me. I am sorry. Wah, wah, wah. I mean, I assume this was a Christina question, but mine is a DOS keyboard professional, if anyone's interested.
Are you speaking QWERTY?
Yeah, I'm not cool enough, and I have labels on the keys. I'm not cool enough for like the all black one.
What else? Dan?
I just flipped my keyboard over to see if I could find a model number on it. I can't, or it's not legible anyways. It's a Logitech. It's got an aluminum base plate and it's got LEDs on it, and it's boring. Other than that, it's clicky. I like it. It's got a good click.
Nice.
The only thing that's interesting about it is I replaced the escape key with a Jolly Rancher key that Phil Terone sent.
Sweet.
He had some Jolly Rancher keys made up. Now I have a place for it.
Go Al?
Well, I've got a bunch. I've got right now, my daily driver right now is an EVGA, and I can't remember the model number of it. And it's pretty clicky. It's got the sensor and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, I think if you get old enough, you look at things and you say, oh, a scope used to cost $9,000 and now they're $200. So I can't stop buying them, right? Or, so use anything you want for that, right? And I think mechanical keyboards are like that too. I actually have an IBM Model M. I do use it sometimes, but it's woefully short on keys. And then I go through a bunch of other ones. And oddly enough, some of these cheap mechanical keyboards, which will probably curl Christina's toes, but, they're actually not bad. These, what are the ones? The Red Dragon and things like that. If you can get through the documentation, they're pretty serviceable. So I have mechanical keyboards all over the house. Everybody uses them because that's all we have, essentially. And I do have the weird labels. I always get a full keyboard. I have the numeric keypad, and I don't use the numeric keypad. So I always remap those into something. So right now, if you hit number 2, that brings up GIMP, and number 8 tiles my windows, and one of the other buttons above there floats windows instead of tiles them and things like that. So that's really into my workflow. I tried doing Dvorak years ago. I love it. The problem is I use too many other people's computers, and that just drives you crazy, right? It's hard enough switching to Windows or something without having to go, oh, wait, all the keys are now in a completely different place. So I eventually gave that up, and I never got very good at it, but I always want to do that. If I could ever just go live on an island by myself, it's going to be Dvorak all the way. The Hackaday Island.
where mechanical keyboards grow like coconuts from the trees.
That's right. It'll be like the Thunderbird Island, I think. Have a lot in common with that.
I'm going to go now because I want Christina to go last. So I'm not going to be overshadowed. Nobody wants to follow Christina and the keyboard
Exactly.
off. My keyboard's actually of my own making. It's a Springsaurus, which was the name of a fictional animal that my son, it was his favorite fictitious animal back when I made this keyboard. So the keyboard's actually called the Springsaurus, was his favorite made-up dinosaur. It's a keyboard. What is it? It's a 3D printed keyboard with a bunch of cherry blues in it. The shape is, I actually went with that staggered offset orthogonal and then tilted out so it matches my hands thing. And I actually put a piece of paper down, put graphite on my fingertips, and I put them on a piece of paper and I measured them and I made this keyboard in OpenSCAD. So it's actually a totally custom. I made too few keys, I will admit it. And that's because I was lazy and it was hand wiring. And I rationalized it saying this is going to be my travel keyboard and I'm going to make a cooler one later. And I just never have.
How has this not shown up in Hackaday, Elliot?
It's worse. I mean, I think I even wrote the OpenSCAD that does the keyboard generation pretty much parametric. So you could like measure your own fingertips and you could just do the fingers down
Oh.
and make your own. Maybe I should. Again, like I said, it doesn't have enough keys. It's only got 4 function keys and it doesn't have any of the numpads. It doesn't even have number keys. I guess it's a 48 key keyboard. So you have to do everything with modifiers. And I thought it was a good idea at the time. And I've been suffering through it the last 5 years, so I guess it's not all that bad. Christina, bringing it up. What are you typing on?
Geez, I can't follow that. I just use a plain old Kinesis Advantage still, because it saved me from, well, that and surgery, saved me from repetitive stress injury issues.
But how many keyboards do you have, Christina?
Yeah.
That's the question.
She ducked that question.
Oh, like 30-ish, maybe, probably. I don't really have any cool macros. I did move copy paste to mouse buttons a long time ago because I just got tired of doing it with my left hand at all. I've got shift under my thumb. That's not a typical Kinesis key. For some reason, they still have it on the pinkies, but I put it under my thumb. You may recall I used to use foot pedals, but those were causing their own set of problems, and I couldn't exactly take them anywhere, so I stopped using them. As far as what I would like to see in a keyboard, really a super clickiness without a lot of force needed. And I think it'd be cool to see people getting back into buckling springs and things like that. So
Yay, buckling spring.
yeah.
A question came in. We all have hacks that we see on Hackaday that we want to get around to copying, but what do you see on Hackaday that actually has inspired you to do something? Name a hack that you've read on Hackaday and actually done.
I have 3.
Does this Al say it's 3? Al was prepared ahead of time.
It's his question.
You know, it's funny to me, as much as we write and see, I don't generally go off and go, oh, let me build that. You know, and maybe some of the simple things where it's like, oh, how do you solder this particular connector? You learn how to do it, and maybe you do it in a different context. But the ones that really stood out in my mind that I really wanted to do and did, one of them was the $4 Z80 computer that I was just so fascinated with that. It was a Z80 that you can still buy, and basically an Arduino, and that's it. And the Arduino was everything for the Z80, the clock, the memory, the terminal, everything. So it was something you could really easily throw together, and you could run CPM on it. And of course, I had to go overboard and double the amount of storage on it and reported CPM for it to have some extra features, and contributed all that back into the community. And it's been on Hackaday. So it was kind of full circle. But that, again, that's one of those things where it's like, wow, I wanted an Altair when I was, when they were $1,500 in a reasonable configuration, and it might as well have been $1 million. And now I can get one for essentially one for $4. Yay, right? Probably the same reason I built Oscar's PDP-8 kit. We wrote that up, and I was like, yeah, I think I want one of those. And oddly enough, I can't remember who did it. I'd have to go look it up, but I have right now on my desk the little homemade HP 41C clone. And, I'm not one to normally build kits, but that's 2 kits that I did build from buying them from the guys, either Tindy or wherever they were selling kits, was the PDP-8 and also this HP 41, which sadly is laid out more like an HP 15, but it still has all the functions. And it turns out, I guess there's open source emulators for that CPU. So it's really just the guy took a open source emulator, the 41C microcode, and built a nice 3D printed case and a circuit board for it. But it looks great. If you didn't look at it, if you didn't put it in your hands and just looked at it from a arm's length, you would swear it's an HP 15C with an HP 41C keyboard somehow rotated to landscape. So those are the 3 that really came to mind. I'm sure there's been a few others, but those are ones I actually still use from time to time for one reason or another, and something I got excited about because I wrote about it and ran off and either built it or bought it.
Anyone else got one?
Well, without the benefit of Al's preparedness, I would say there's in a very specific sense, some of the projects that Aaron Christoffel has done. He's done open source firmwares for a lot of weirdo gadgets. The one that kind of comes first to mind is the Xiaomi Bluetooth thermometers. He did a firmware for that kind of freed them of their proprietary back end. And I have those like all over the house because they're like $3, and you can put this firmware on there, and it would let you just pick up the temperature and humidity over. It just sends it out over like a Bluetooth Low Energy packet, so it's really easy to scrape them with like a Python script or something. So I got a bunch of those after he did the firmware. But then there's also been stuff we've written up, whether it was I wrote it up or I saw it, that just kind of inspired me to look more into certain things. And the one that comes to mind is like Universal Radio Hacker, which is a really cool tool that I had first heard about after seeing it on Hackaday and seeing what people were doing with it, and then that got me to actually start messing around with it and being able to decode stuff from the software defined radio and that kind of thing. So I do find that happens more often maybe than like the hardware stuff. It'll be an interesting like a software tool that'll pop up. Obviously the bar is a lot lower to try out a new software tool than maybe build a new gadget, right? So I do occasionally see someone reference, hey, this is a cool serial terminal emulator or something in a write up, and that takes me down kind of a rabbit hole, which is always cool.
Absolutely. Dan, Kristina, anything stick out?
I bought a Gigatron after doing a Gigatron hack chat with Walter Belgers. I was kind of inspired to go off and finally just build a 7400 logic computer. And I figured, okay, well, the kit's here. Why don't I just do that? It's sitting in a shelf someplace, partially completed. I think all I managed to get soldered up were the resistors before I had to go do something else, probably go write an article. So I should probably drag it out and get that finished up. And yeah, aspirationally though, I keep picking up reverse engineering hacks to write about, and all of them just fascinate me because I could do that. And then I try to sit down and do it, and I'm looking for the the pads on a PCB to solder up to a UART, and I just like, no, there's nothing here. I don't know what to do. And then I watch the videos or see the articles about reverse engineering, and like, oh wow, that was so easy. I could do that. But for some, it's just it never actually comes up, or I never get the right piece of hardware across my desk, I guess, that has all the good stuff on it. And I plainly just don't have the know-how, but I'm getting there.
That's a good one. It does make you wonder, though. There's got to be selection bias going on, right? Like the ones that get written up are the ones where people did find that UART port on it and could get into U-boot, right? The ones that don't get written up are like the 9 other boxes that you open up. You're like, there's no freaking test points, and you just throw it away. On to the next one.
Well, I always do appreciate the write-ups that cover the warts and all. I like to see the dead ends and the beating the head against the table. And, I appreciate someone who's actually willing to document that and be like, yeah, I wasted a day doing this and it got me nowhere. Obviously we all want to see the glorious success story, but the reality is sometimes just as interesting, like how you got there.
Al made me remember that I got a harpsichord kit from Tindy a long time ago. That was pretty cool. It's really small, and it's a ton of like micro switches and micro buttons, and you hold them down, obviously, and you stroke a set of circuit traces to make the sound. It's really cool.
So it's the harpsichord with no strings attached?
Yeah, you got it. Oh, but there's tons of stuff I'd like to build, like primarily a laundry monitor, something like stuff like that. Various keyboards, for sure.
Not enough keyboards?
No.
Let's have more keyboards.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have built my keyboard if I hadn't seen, 2 or 3 articles about people hand wiring their own keyboards on Hackaday. And so, it's not copying anyone's particular project, but I sure wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been inspired to do it by seeing it on Hackaday. The other day I was thinking about adding Bluetooth to this one, and lo and behold, Kristina writes up the next day an article about someone who had a Bluetooth keyboard using ZMK firmware on the Pico W, which was those were the missing pieces for me. So that was awesome. I haven't done it yet. The first hack I ever remade from Hackaday comes from way back in 2008, I think, which was this marvelous hack of Micah Elizabeth Scott's AVR as an RFID tag. And this was just so crazy. It was using an 8-pin ATtiny 13, I think, and an inductor as the coil, and that's it. and it's like back powered through the reverse protection diodes and all sorts of horrible hacks to it. And of course, it has two parts. It's got an AVR and this inductor on it, and you can make a functioning low frequency RFID tag off of it, completely programmable. That's just astounding. And this is when I kind of was deep in my hackerspace phase, and I conned a bunch of other people into making this project as well. And we all did it. And this was all because of Hackaday, long before I started working here. But like Tom says, I think the things you learn maybe even more than the projects you replicate, right? Like, here I know of the existence of this software tool now, or I know of the existence of this procedure or whatever. And that's I think what does it for me more than, individual projects. I don't usually remake them, I think. But definitely, like, if you ask me where anything I know comes from, the answer is Hackaday. Question from Sir Castor via Discord. Couldn't you do this with a 555?
I am
Always
a
yes.
555.
Crickets. Fine. Show of hands. Who's actually used the 555? Show of hands.
Oh, yeah,
Anyone
my
who's
hands up.
actually used the 555?
Two hands.
In the last 5 years. In the last 5 years.
Oh, okay.
You
Really?
just put my hand down. I was going to raise my hand, but I don't think I've done it in 5 years.
Yeah, probably
no.
not.
I think the real takeaway from that is that now the microcontroller is the new 555, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you go put an AT Tiny in something, that is the new 555.
Absolutely.
I think it's kind of like saying, what's the last project you did with a bit and brace? Well, you don't probably, right? You probably got a nice battery operated drill and you use that. And it makes the hole. And I think that's the thing. I always say, when you go out and buy a drill, people say, oh, you wanted a drill, but actually you wanted a hole. And if you have another way to make a hole, that's fine. So I think it's the same thing. People didn't buy 555s because of their technical marvelousness. It was they were a very versatile building block when it was hard to get versatile building blocks. But now we have better versatile building blocks, and they're cheap and easy, and we use those. So I know he was asking that question tongue-in-cheek, but I think that's if you take it unnecessarily seriously, I think that's the answer.
I do have a confession about the 555. I remember...
Confess, my son.
I remember very early in my Hackaday career, I was writing up an article on something could use a 555, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, do I have any 555s? Like, oh man, I don't. And here I am, proclaiming my allegiance to the 555, and I was like, well, okay. I went out and I ordered a tube of them. I probably got 10 or 15, and I just threw them on a shelf, and I found them the other day, and like, oh, that's right. I've got a bunch of 555s. I should do something with them.
Wonder if you could eBay tubes of 555, 555.
There's so few communities where you can be like peer pressured into buying an IC that you didn't really want, but you're like, well, I have to fit in with everybody else.
But here we are.
Well, I'm laughing my ass off because I used a bit and brace 2 days ago to drill a hole because it's the
There you go.
only 16 millimeter wood bit I have fits in this ancient bit and brace. And but like you say, I wanted a 16 millimeter hole. I didn't want to use the bit and
hole
brace.
was the
If it
thing,
would've-
yeah.
But my 16 millimeter bit has a 4-sided tang on the end of it, right? Because it fits in the bit and brace and it doesn't fit in a normal drill. And so I had to use it. Okay, we'll wrap the show up with what is your favorite fictional robot? A hat tip to the absurd questions that Alicia asks on Embedded FM.
I have to say Johnny 5 from Short Circuit.
Kristina.
Rosie from the Jetsons, because you never forget your first robot.
Dan.
Man, so many. Robot from Lost in Space, the original one. Robbie the Robot, Codsworth from Fallout 4. I don't know. Take your pick.
Al.
I'm surprised nobody said Gort, but I guess that shows my age. That's from the day the Earth stood still for you young people. So
I can't believe nobody picked R2-D2. We've been on a total Star Wars jag here in my family, and when you say fictional robot, R2-D2 comes to mind.
Well, see, I thought Data because I'm a Star Trek loyalist, but maybe that's the question people should have asked us: was Star Trek or Star Wars? You want to do that one?
Okay, super quick. We'll do the round then. Star Trek or Star Wars? Al.
Star Trek, of course.
Dan.
Star Trek, of course. I watched original run episodes. I can remember
Yes.
seeing them.
Yep.
Christina.
At this point, Trek.
Wow.
Man. Tom.
If you thought I was gonna, break the agreement, no, it is definitely Star Trek. I am a huge fan. I even forced myself to watch Discovery.
Yes, yes. That is a fan.
Took one for the team.
Elliot, are you really going to make it non-unanimous?
I will do that. I have a 9-year-old son. I am contractually obligated to say Star Wars here. Cool. I think let's call it. Thank you all very much for doing this.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
We'll see you in 256 more episodes, right?
Well, that does it for our very special anniversary edition of Hackaday Podcast. Thanks very much for listening. We'll have links for you in the show notes over at hackaday.com/podcast. Keep those hacks coming in to tips@hackaday.com. And until next week,
Keep on hacking.
hello, this is future Elliot. Kristina and I actually recorded a normal podcast after we got done with the roundtable, but it ended up too long. I'm going to process that up and we'll have a special extra edition coming out early next week. So stay tuned for that. Oh yeah, and then the other question, no, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to tell them how we sync up a 5-way podcast. We don't know the answer to that yet. Okay, now go ow. Okay, now Dan. This is awesome. Christina. And Tom. That's sweet. We're gonna get.
That sounds weird.
We're gonna be able to map everybody's latency this way. This is
Yeah, right.
awesome.